It all started with an invitation. My old college friend, Ethan, insisted, come to Whispering Pines Lodge for the weekend. You need a break. At first, I hesitated. Work had been overwhelming, and the thought of traveling to a remote cabin in the woods didn't sound appealing. But Ethan was persistent, and eventually I gave in. The drive was long and eerie, the road narrowing as I approached. Towering pine trees lined the way, their twisted branches casting strange shadows in the fading sunlight. Finally, I arrived. The cabin was larger than I expected, more of a lodge, its windows glowing warmly in the evening light. Ethan stood outside, holding a beer. Is it amazing? He grinned. It was, but something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe the trees, leaning too close to the cabin, maybe the silence. There were no birds, no rustling leaves, just an unnatural quiet. I shrugged off the unease and followed Ethan inside. That night, as we sat by the fire, Ethan shared the cabin's history. This place used to be a lumber camp in the 1940s. A few workers went missing. Some say they were murdered. Others believe they walked into the forest and never came back. Sounds like a classic campfire tale. I joked. Ethan smirked but said nothing. Later, I stepped outside for fresh air. The darkness beyond the cabin was absolute, thick, endless. The trees looked like dark figures against the night sky. And then I saw it, a shadowy figure, standing at the edge of the tree-line. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. It just watched me. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, and it was gone. I barely slept. Just as I started drifting off, a noise made my eyes snap open. Scratching. Asterisk. Asterisk. At first, I thought it was a tree branch scraping against the window, but it was too rhythmic, too deliberate. At 3:15 a.m., I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Slowly, I aimed it at the window. Nothing, just fog on the glass. But then my stomach clenched. Faint handprints. Small. Too small. Like a child's. But they were too high. No normal child could have reached there. A chill ran down my spine. March 4th. The next morning, I told Ethan about what I had seen. He only laughed. Your mind is playing tricks on you, man. That afternoon, I explored the cabin and stumbled upon something odd. A locked door beneath the staircase. What's in there? I asked. Ethan's face went pale. That door stays locked. Always. That night, the scratching returned, this time louder. And at 3:15 a.m., something thumped from beneath the floorboards. The basement. I couldn't breathe. The next day, I made up my mind. I had to see what was in that basement. While Ethan was outside chopping wood, I searched for a key. I found it. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. A set of wooden stairs disappeared into darkness. The air was thick, damp, wrong. And then I heard it. A whisper. Soft. Right next to my ear. It was calling your name. My blood ran cold. I turned to run. But the door slammed shut. My phone flickered. The whispers grew louder. And then, something moved. In the darkness. My heart stopped. Ethan! I screamed. The door burst open. Ethan stood there, wide-eyed. Run. He shouted. We fled the cabin. The next story, please like and subscribe my channel. Imagine being isolated in a cabin deep in the woods, the kind of place you would expect peace and serenity. But what if it wasn't peace you found, but something far darker? This is a true story that will make you question your next cabin getaway. The isolation, the silence, and the mystery lurking in the shadows. Let's dive into a horrifying experience that happened to a group of friends who decided to take a weekend trip to a remote cabin, only to find out that it was more than they bargained for. Story. A group of 5 friends have been planning their weekend retreat for months. The cabin, tucked away in a remote forest, seemed perfect for a quiet escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. Surrounded by towering trees, with no neighbors in sight, it was an ideal location for hiking, relaxation, and unwinding. The first few hours went by uneventfully. The fire crackled, and the scent of pine filled the air. But as night descended, an unsettling silence fell over the area. There were no sound of animals, no rustling of the wind, just an eerie stillness that made the group uneasy. They joked about it at first, attributing it to the isolation. But then strange things started happening. One of the friends, Sarah, noticed the lights flickering as she walked past a window. At first, she thought it was just a glitch, but when she looked closer, she could see a shadowy figure standing in the distance, watching the cabin. She rushed inside and told the others, but by the time they looked out, nothing was there. They laughed it off, thinking it was just their minds playing tricks. However, as the night wore on, things escalated. Footsteps were heard outside, pacing around the cabin. The group figured it was an animal, but when they checked, they saw nothing. The noises grew louder, more distinct, human-like footsteps, as if someone was circling the cabin. Every time they looked out, there was no one there. Panic set in when they discovered that the cabin's front door had been partially opened despite locking it earlier. Someone or something was trying to get in. They barricaded themselves inside, but the terror didn't stop. The mysterious figure returned, now closer, standing right outside the windows, its face obscured by the darkness. By morning, they were desperate to leave, but when they tried to start their car, it wouldn't budge. It was as if something had sabotaged it. With no choice but to wait, they decided to try and explore the nearby area for help. They stumbled upon a creepy, old shack hidden among the trees, its door wide open. Inside, they found disturbing signs. Symbols drawn on the walls, old candles, and a journal filled with unsettling entries about people who had gone missing in the area. When they returned to the cabin, the figure was gone, but the tension remained. Something had been watching them, something that wasn't human. They eventually managed to get the car started and left, but the fear stayed with them long after they'd gone. To this day, they don't know who or what was haunting that cabin, but they'll never forget the terror they felt. Ending message. Some places are better left unexplored. There are things in the woods, things we might not ever fully understand. The next story, please like and subscribe my channel. If you ever find yourself in a cabin deep in the forest, make sure you're not the only ones watching, because you might not be alone. A cabin with blood stains on the walls and strange symbols on the door. Would you ever dare to stay in a place like this? Intro. This is a story of a couple who sought a peaceful vacation in a remote cabin, only to face something far darker than they ever expected. What happened to them is a terrifying experience that left an unshakable shadow in their minds. Today, we'll take you through a chilling true story that still haunts them to this day. Story. A few years ago, Elizabeth and Daniel decided to take a weekend getaway. Both of them were tired of the city hustle and longed for some quiet time in a secluded cabin. They booked a cabin in a small mountain area that seemed perfect for relaxation. Upon arrival, the cabin appeared beautiful and serene, surrounded by gardens, a small lake in front, and trees all around. Everything seemed perfect at first, and they settled in for a quiet evening. But as the night grew darker, something strange started to happen. A chilling cold filled the air inside the cabin, and there was an unsettling rustling sound, almost like soft whispers. Elizabeth turned to Daniel and suggested it was just the wind, but they both knew something else was off. On the second night, while they were sleeping, Elizabeth suddenly heard a strange sound. Someone knocking at the door. She woke Daniel up, and they both rushed downstairs to open the door. But when they opened it, there was nothing there. The silence outside was deafening. This event left them both with an overwhelming sense of dread, but they brushed it off and tried to continue their vacation. But as the days went on, the occurrences grew more disturbing. One morning, Elizabeth found strange markings on the walls of the cabin, almost like claw marks. The air became thick with a strange energy, and they could both feel that they were being watched. The unease started to grow, but they were too far from the nearest town to leave. It wasn't long before they realized they were not alone in the cabin. Late one night, Daniel heard footsteps in the hallway outside their bedroom. He went to check, but when he opened the door, there was nothing there. However, the footsteps continued, getting closer as though someone or something was circling the cabin. On their last night, they decided to leave, but as they packed their bags, the cabin seemed to close in on them. The temperature dropped drastically, and the lights flickered as though something was draining the energy. When they finally rushed to start their car, the engine wouldn't turn on. The feeling of being trapped was overwhelming. They ran into the woods for help. But when they returned to the cabin, they discovered it had been completely ransacked. The door was wide open, and the markings on the walls were now more vivid. They quickly packed their things and fled, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something was following them. To this day, they don't know who or what was haunting that cabin, but they both swear it was no ordinary place. Next story, please like and subscribe my channel. I always thought I was a rational person. I believed in facts, science, and logic. But after what happened to me in that abandoned cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains, I questioned everything. The beginning, it started as a weekend getaway. My friend James and I had planned to spend 3 days hiking, fishing, and just disconnecting from the world. We found a cheap cabin rental online, rustic, isolated, perfect for adventure. The owner, an old man named Clyde, warned us not to stay out too late and never to open the basement door. At the time, we laughed. Just another creepy old man trying to scare the tourists. We should have listened. First night, the whispers. The first night, everything felt wrong. The air was heavy, thick with an unexplainable tension. Around midnight, as I lay in bed, I heard it, a whisper, soft, almost like a breath against my ear. Get out! I shot up in bed, my heart pounding. James was snoring in the other room. Maybe I imagined it. I forced myself to sleep, but the feeling of being watched never left. Second night, the shadow in the window. March 4th, 8:50. The next night, James and I sat outside drinking beers, enjoying the eerie silence of the woods. That's when we saw it, movement in the cabin window. A shadow. Someone was inside. James grabbed a flashlight and stormed in, thinking it was an animal. The cabin was empty. Nothing disturbed. But then we noticed something terrifying. The basement door was slightly open. We hadn't touched it. Third night. The nightmare becomes real. We should have left, but curiosity got the better of us. That night, we decided to check the basement. We slowly crept down the stairs, our flashlights flickering. The air was damp, carrying the scent of rot. Then we saw it. Asterisk chains. Shackles. Bloody scratch marks on the walls. Asterisk. And then the whispering returned. They know you're here. James screamed, pointing behind me. I turned and saw a pale, eyeless figure crawling toward us in the darkness, its mouth hanging open in a silent scream. We ran. We never looked back. Aftermath. We told the police. They found bones in the basement. Human bones. Clyde, the cabin owner, was arrested. He had been renting out his place, luring victims in for decades. Some had escaped. Most hadn't. But the scariest part? March 4th, before he was taken away, he smirked at me and whispered, asterisk, she liked you, she'll find you again. Asterisk, that was 2 years ago. Every night, I still hear the whisper. Asterisk, get out. Asterisk. Next story, please like and subscribe my channel. I never believed in ghosts, spirits, or anything supernatural. I thought horror stories were just exaggerated tales meant to scare people. That was until I spent a night in Blackwood Asylum, a place long abandoned, yet still filled with something. The dare. It all started as a stupid dare. My friends and I were drinking at a campfire near the outskirts of town. Someone brought up Blackwood Asylum, an old psychiatric hospital that had been shut down decades ago. They said patients were mistreated, experimented on, and even killed. The asylum had been abandoned for over 50 years. Yet locals swore they still saw shadows moving inside and heard screams echoing through the halls at night. I scoffed at the idea. Ghosts aren't real, I said. That's when my friend Mark challenged me. Asterisk, spend 1 hour inside. Alone. Prove there's nothing there. Asterisk. I laughed. Easy. I wish I had never agreed. Entering the asylum, at midnight, I walked up to the massive, decaying building. The front doors were locked, so I found a broken window and climbed inside. The air was thick with dust and decay. The hallways stretched into endless darkness. My flashlight flickered as I walked, my footsteps echoing off the cracked tile floor. I passed empty rooms, old hospital beds covered in tattered sheets, and rusted medical equipment left behind like the doctors just vanished one day. Then I heard it, a soft shuffle, like footsteps. I spun around, shining my flashlight behind me. Nothing, just my imagination, I told myself. I pressed forward. The operating room. As I moved deeper inside, I found an operating room. The rusted surgical table was stained dark. From what I didn't want to know, the cabinets were filled with old medical tools, syringes, and saws. That's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the wall, written in dried brownish-red letters, *Help US. I exhaled sharply, trying to shake off the unease. Probably just graffiti from some teenagers, right? Then the lights flickered, even though the building had no electricity. The whispering starts. The air suddenly became ice cold. My breath was visible. And then I heard whispers. Dozens of them. Soft. Indistinct. All around me. I turned, my flashlight shaking in my hand. I saw nothing. But the feeling of being watched was unbearable. I took a step back. And then a loud slam echoed through the hallways. The door I had entered through had just shut itself. My chest tightened. My legs refused to move. That's when I heard the laugh. A sickening, inhuman giggle right behind me. The shadow figure. I turned slowly and I saw it. A figure stood at the far end of the hallway. Tall, thin, twisted. Its face was wrong, like a distorted human skull with dark, empty holes where eyes should be. I ran. I sprinted down the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. But no matter how fast I ran, I could hear the footsteps behind me, getting closer. The escape? I reached the entrance, yanking on the rusted door handle. It wouldn't budge. A cold breath brushed against my neck. And then a voice whispered in my ear. You shouldn't have come here. I screamed. Then, suddenly, the door flew open. I fell outside, crashing onto the ground. When I turned back, the asylum was silent. The door was slightly open, as if inviting me back inside. But I knew better. I ran. The aftermath. I never told my friends the full truth about what happened that night. I just said I got spooked and left early. But the thing is, every night since then, when I lay in bed, I still hear the whispers. And sometimes I see a shadow standing at the foot of my bed, waiting. The end, or is it? Please like and subscribe to my channel.